Hi everyone, Axie Infinity Origin is now out, and we are here to break down its gameplay and strategy to its very core. Our goal ever since the game is announced is to create a mathematical model that would help us determine whether the game is balanced or not. Now, whether it's possible or not is still up there for us to discover. And the step towards that objective are the basic concepts in the game that we will be discussing in this video. So, let's hop in. Okay, let's start with the very basic. What is a game? A game is anything that first has a winning condition and a set of moves that is used to achieve those winning conditions. We call them moveset. So for Axie Origin, the winning condition is to reduce the HP of your opponent's Axies to 0. And the moveset are the cards, along with the effects of runes and charms. Now, there are many types of games, and one of the most common ones are turn-based games. Turn-based games are basically games where two players take turns in doing their moves to achieve the winning condition. Whoever gets the winning condition first wins. And Axie Infinity now is a turn-based game. Now, there are three major factors that affects the overall experience of Origin. And they are: moveset option control is the ability for a player to choose his or her moveset during any turn. So for example, in Origin, you initially draw 5 cards out of 18. That 5 cards are your initial moveset. Then you draw, again, another 5 on your next turn. Then that will be your next moveset. As it is, you don't have a say on what moves you get on these movesets, because it's randomly generated. In contrast to V2, for example, these control comes from skipping turns mechanics. So same as Origin, players don't have control on the initial moveset. But since unused cards are carried over to the next round, players now can choose to not play a card in order to control his or her succeeding moveset. Now in Origin, by default, players do not have moveset option control. But via card effects like Retain, Draw, Innate, Tutor, and Scry. Unlike V2 though, these moveset option controls are not readily available to you every time. You need to draw them or set it up during your deck building. And that's where the most important changes happen to the game. The moveset option control is now part of the deck building experience. So it feels like during the deck building in V2, you're mostly allocating your build resource to the game specifics like attack, defense, heal, and utility. But in Origin, you're not just allocating your build to the game specifics, but also to this moveset option control. Do you want more control? You can. But you have to sacrifice some attack or some utility to your build. So if you look about it, the actual battle does not start in turn 1, but actually during the deck building. So it's very essential to give more emphasis and time on your deck building. Move volume control, on the other hand, is the ability of the player to modify the amount of moves he or she can use during a turn. In Origin, this is represented by energies. And similar to moveset option control, this also becomes a part of the deck building experience. Particularly, these are some of the cards that can be used for move volume control. Progress indicators, on the other hand, are just factors that affects the overall progression of the game. They indicate how much a player is closer to achieve the winning condition. Some example of these indicators are Axie count. If you have more Axies remaining, then you're probably closer to winning. But it's not everything, because you can still lose in 2v1 or 3v1 situation. Card cycle. The more you could cycle on your powerful cards, the more your chances of winning. Losing your advantage on Axie count indicator actually gives you an advantage on the card cycle part. So make sure to remember that before killing your enemy's Axie. Resource. The more you accumulated stacking resources, the more your chances of winning moving forward. So stacking resources like healing boost, attack boost, leaves, feathers, and poison gives you advantage in the mid and late game situation. Using the concept of progress indicators, we can create different ways to strategize in the game. The first of this is using the concept of winning events. Winning events are basically just a moment in the battle where you're almost guaranteed to win. So for example, consider this build. 2 plants with clover, cucumber, and watering can. And a reptile with topaz, kestrel, and tiny turtle. This build has a winning event when it's blood moon, and have advantage on the following progress indicator. The healing damage difference. This is just the difference between the max damage output you will take versus your healing capabilities. So you want your healing resources to be enough to sustain the max damage output of your opponent and the blood moon. You can then win by just letting your opponent die in the blood moon. This build has also other winning event, like when you have accumulated enough banish card for the topaz, and enough card cycle for your kestrel and tiny turtle. These winning events form your overall game strategy, because most of the time, you'll be targeting one of these winning events. So for our sample build, if we can gain enough damage output on the topaz, or gain enough card cycle on kestrel and tiny turtle, we always have the option to bring the battle in the blood moon. Turn point tracking. A way for us to track how much progress we have on the game is by determining how much you won a turn and by how much you lose a turn. You lose a turn if you don't make good progress on one of the progress indicators, and you won if you do otherwise. To illustrate this, consider the following game. In turn 7, I put up a high shield worth 155. So in turn 8, during the opponent's turn, the opponent has 2 types of moveset: attack moveset and resource progress moveset. The opponent pushed through with the attack moveset, which really result in only 25 damage. Which in turn 9, I just heal all of that. Plus, I heal some more. So turn 8 of the opponent does not produce any progress, which means the opponent lost that turn 8. On the other hand, in turn 7, I was able to add a resource, and that is 2 leaves for each of my Axies. And my shield allows my opponent to sort of waste his or her turn. So turn 7 is a win for me. We should note here that our shield is not just used as a defensive move, but actually as an offensive move. The shield is not just to allow my Axie to not lose HP, but actually to attack my opponent's next turn. By wasting moves on my shield, the opponent will not make good progress on that turn. Going back to turn 8, the opponent could have played his or her resource progress moveset instead. That would give him or her 2 bubbles and healing from Sakura. That's a progress on the resource side, which is a better progress than playing attack moveset. I personally call this shield denial. Opponent tracking. Tracking your opponent's move unlocks your game planning potential. So, for example, your opponent just used a card like Tiny Turtle. Now, look at the opponent draw pile count. Let's divide it by 5. That's 2. Then, we can be sure that Tiny Turtle will not appear on the next 2 turns of the opponent. We can then disregard the defensive option against Tiny Turtle, like Cleanse and Taunt, and focus more on the offensive side or resource building for the next 2 turns of the opponent. Now, even though the first card draw is mostly random, as the draw keeps coming, and by looking at your draw pile, you can then moreover have an idea on what the next draw card would be. If you track your opponent's card, then you will also have similar idea on what the next cards of your opponent would be. You can then use it to time your use of secret cards by tracking the chances of opponent of drawing up attack cards. You can also use it in playing Tiny Turtle. By tracking cards, you will know cards that aren't played yet, and therefore can target the Axie with the most chance of getting cards. So after days of playing Origin, it seems that the game has strong ties with probability. This feels like V2 is a smooth, calm sea, perfect for sailing and controlling your boat. Origin, on the other hand, is a chaotic, wavy sea. That is perfect for surfing. In Origin, you don't fight waves. You ride with the waves. It's like a game of timing down probabilities, striking at the perfect time when you feel like the wave is about to form. It's surfing along with the probabilities. But because Origin rides the waves of probability, it doesn't mean that it's less complicated than V2. Because it might be. We might have to dig deeper to learn more.